In our continuation with the series on the light languages, we're going to take a look now at the alphabet of the Ark. This is part of the language of Metatron, an archangelic alphabet. In the historic Kabbalah, there is mention of something called eye writings or Sha'Maia-NEAAF. According to Thoth, the divine language form represented in the alphabet of the Ark is contained within the matrix of this greater archangelic flame script. The actual eye writings are composed of circles and lines in the form of small flames, an encoding of sorts. The symbolic keys to moving into the higher worlds of consciousness lie within this archangelic alphabet called the Sha'Maia-NEAAF. This alphabet, or series of symbol codes, is representative of the higher template for creation. The higher intelligences, such as the Elohim, creator beings, use this template to project the elements of life itself into creations such as the planet Earth. An analogy to demonstrate this principle could be seen in the projection of a movie onto a screen by a high-powered and focused beam of light coming from a projector. The projector and beam of light represent the Elohim creator beings, consciousness. The celluloid and focusing device of the projector represent the template, and its synchronization function, the screen, represents the magnetic receptacle or matrix with which will receive the higher image, and the image, movie, is the creation itself. The celluloid of the archangelic language has a function which also keeps the lesser creation in synchronization with the higher template, like the focusing device on the projector in our analogy. It is the harmonic resonance of these archangelic letters with both the higher vibratory frequency patterns of God's of God's name and the elements of the lesser creation worlds, which allows this synchronization to occur. They act as an intermediary transducer, much as a tuning fork will start the second tuning fork to begin to vibrating also. So let me go back and read that again. They act as an intermediary transducer, much as a tuning fork, which when struck, and then being brought into proximity of another tuning fork, will start the second fork to begin vibrating also. This occurs only if the second fork is tuned to a resonant harmonic of the first tuning fork's note or waveform. Now consider the 3 tuning forks, each one of the second 2 tuned to a lesser resonant harmonic, slower vibratory frequency than the one before it. Thus, when the first tuning fork is struck and placed into proximity with the second now begins to vibrate at its own frequency, and the third, also being in the correct position, will also begin vibrating at its own frequency pattern. Thus, we can see that now we have 3 levels of creation, all being put into motion from the first, or uppermost level, which vibrates at the highest frequency. So long as the other levels are tuned or synchronized to the first in this manner, then the projection of the higher realm can occur in the lower. The slower vibration of the last tuning fork is a perfect image of the vibration of the higher tuning fork, but the rate of its vibration per unit of time has been slowed down. This is a good simple model to demonstrate the principles involved in the projection of the elements of this world from the higher worlds of intelligence. The alphabet of the Ark is one such archangelic language, which serves as the middle tuning fork for us. Now, let me pause a moment. This is kind of, flows in a certain way and could easily be misunderstood. But if we have 2 tuning forks, and one is a lower sound and the other is higher, and you put them together, the lower frequency will begin to match the higher. However, what Thoth is saying here is that it really has a resonance still its own. It's not a carbon copy of the first fork. That is, if it has its own template involved. Now, if we just have two tuning forks and they're exactly alike, but one is set at a lower frequency than the other, well, that's kind of a different matter. But what Thoth is interjecting into this is that each plane has its own template, and it's not going to break the bounds of that template. But if it is put into proximity of the highest template, the vibratory energy will be duplicated in both the others without changing the uniqueness of the template. So if you have a template that contains blue, green, and yellow, and the blue, green, and yellow vibration is not meeting its quota, it's not, but it's not the highest it can be, then you bring it into synchronization with a higher one, then it will be the highest it can be, but it won't change to black, white, and red, which is in the first template. In other words, it's not going to change its colors, so to speak. And maybe that's not a good analogy because colors are vibration and you can change colors through changing the vibration. But what I'm trying to demonstrate here is if you have a principle that's in that plane of existence, it's not going to change its principle when it matches the higher vibration. It's simply going to reach its highest perfection, which has been induced by the highest plane's highest perfection. So that's how it comes down in order. So the uniqueness of it is not changed, just the vibratory resonance. So to continue, the sacred names of God as we know them on earth are composed of the archangelic alphabet known as the Ketev Yinium, and also include the names of the angelic energies which themselves are serving the purpose and function of being the middle tuning fork and thus the language itself. These sacred names not only serve to provide the template for projecting the reality itself in the first place, but also to redeem it now as well. You see, the earth creation has gotten to be like a tuning fork, which no longer vibrates well to the divine tuning fork and its angelic intermediary. Thus the children of light on earth must begin to attune themselves as the third tuning fork to the intermediary angelic tuning fork, which then in turn brings them into resonance again with the ultimate divine tuning fork. In time, the entire creation can be brought back into this vibratory pattern through the efforts of the children of light. And of course, the children of light are any and all of us who choose to be the children of light, who choose that path, who choose to let our light shine and to do the good work. The angelic vibratory codes held within the archangelic language will increasingly integrate with our own genetic consciousness forms as we prepare ourselves for the ascension. Thus, the sound of these vibratory patterns will be incorporated into the matrix of the body of creation. The matrix in this context is the vibratory pattern which is currently the basis for the totality of the creation. The word matrix, however, represents various differing levels of consciousness patterning. The matrix or seal of the human body consciousness, which must be broken for this process to integrate at a cellular level, is correlated to the defiled 666 genetic code. Now, that's heavy-duty stuff, so let's take a look at it for a minute. First of all, when we're talking about something being broken, we're not talking about it I really should have used another word because it's not like broken and crushed. The seal is being released. It is being, cut in two and opened. So opened would be a better word than broken. So let's read this again. The matrix or seal of the human body consciousness must be opened for this process to integrate at a cellular level. And that sentence, it doesn't really work well, but this is correlated to the defiled 666 genetic code. 666 is not a bad number. It never has been, never will be. But it can be influenced and it can be used as a receptor for other energies. In and of itself, there's nothing wrong with it. You could, scribble it on your forehead and you wouldn't wouldn't grow horns. It's not that kind of an energy field. It is just it's a holding, it's a container. And the container is intended to match up with the 999. So when you put the 999 into the 666, you sort of have a yin-yang kind of relationship. However, in the original genetic tampering that went on the planet, and there were several phases of that. One was in Atlantis. One was the Anunnaki, or people, the beings that Thoth calls the Nephilim, that they now call the Anunnaki. I think that's it. I'm not even pronouncing it right. And those were the two main phases. Well, in order to break a code so that it can be manipulated, you have to interface the 666 dynamic in a way. You have to change it so that it can contain something besides the 999. And then you have the flowering of life in another direction, because 666 is the container for the flowering of life. But it has to match up with its partner. And the ultimate partner is the 999. There are other variations, but that's the ultimate. However, it does not normally match up with those numerics, containers, not containers, energy quantum that would defile the original genetic code. It's got a built-in mechanism. Says, no, I'm not accepting that. But that can be rerouted, I guess you'd say. It can be scientifically, genetically, it can be broken and changed. Now, actually, on the higher light worlds, it can't be. But here it can be. And it was. So that's why we just can't stand that number, because it's so vulnerable now to other encodings. So let's go back and read that sentence again. The matrix or seal of the human body consciousness, which must be broken, but I'm using the word now, opened, for this process to integrate at a cellular level, is correlated to the defiled, thus really truly broken, 666 genetic code. The Adam Kadmon is the ultimate divine template for humanity, but has also been tampered with by the Nephilimic overlords. Again, Anunnaki. I got the word right that time. I just couldn't think of it before. It is now being resurrected or reconstructed through the use of the vibratory patterns contained within the divine names, which are in turn formed from the archangelic language. Thus, as we incorporate these higher vibratory patterns into our own consciousness and genetic makeup, we become co-creators in the resurrection of the Adam Kadmon. When we have come into high enough resonance with the frequency patterns of the divine names within our own beingness, the pathway is then opened for the angelic beings holding these patterns to project their image directly into your holistic body, mind, soul template, thereby bringing you the last distance across the upper threshold into your divine heritage, full expression of the Adam Kadmon template. The Adam Kadmon template is actually comprised of the myriad different archangelic codes for humanity, for human manifestation, arranged into the patterns of the divine names, of the many divine names. A name is but a specific arrangement of different frequency patterns, much like a tune is comprised of various notes strung together in harmony. Thus, the Adam Kadmon can be seen as a direct manifestation of the tree of life, The sacred names, vibratory codes, held upon the tree of life are continually being evolved to find the strongest frequency patterns, and the weaker ones, which can be violated by fallen forces, are then culled from the tree. This is the tree of life. It contains the highest and strongest frequency codes in the form of the divine names, which the efforts of the hierarchy have been able to obtain. The efforts of the hierarchy have been able to obtain. The hierarchy in this instance, Thoth refers to, are the ultra-luminant beings, the angelic ones, just the beyond ones, who help us through this patterning and focus and connection with divine source. And they're also helping to put Humpty Dumpty back together again, not just the earth, but the entire universe, the holographic field in which we operate. So they are the ones that gather the codes to do so. The experience of souls within half-light orotronic worlds like Earth provides an excellent arena for determining which of these frequency codes or divine names can be utilized to withstand the manipulative efforts of the Luciferic angelics who separated from the divine inscription, which we must remember also have been created to uphold the function of holding higher templates for reality. It is thus that they are able to rearrange these patterns to suit their own agendas and then place them as overlays upon the divine templates, causing a confused pattern to manifest on Earth, not at all like the intended pattern put into place by the true hierarchy of light. In other words, the bad guys, and I'm using that term, Thoth does not talk that way, but the bad guys took the codes. They had the power because they had contained it from the higher light fields that they took with them when they went into the lower realms. And they now used it to be able to manipulate these templates in a way that they could not have otherwise. Thus, the use of these archangelic language patterns can reactivate our tuning fork so that it vibrates with the true pattern once again, that of the Metatronic Christic consciousness. The office of the Christ and the office of Metatron are master consciousness thresholds. They exist on 3 different levels or functions in the dynamic of the sacred names, i.e. vibratory frequency patterns. This threefold dynamic, concisely defined, is thus: Metatronic holds pathways from the higher worlds to the Adam Kadmon worlds. Christic holds pathways for human enfoldment into the full potential of the Adam Kadmon, and human holds the pathways for the passage of the Adam Kadmon manifestation on Earth or similar worlds. In the latter, the Great Pyramid holds a key for the Earth to be able to access the Adam Kadmon frequency patterns in their undefiled state. Thoth speaks here. There are many different circuits or pathways available for divine fire codes to be assimilated into a planetary reality such as Earth's. One of them is what we are referring to as the alphabet of the Ark. It is a specific angelic frequency pattern with 24 main vibratory pathways that aligns corporeal realms with the full light Metatronic Christic spiral in a specific path of viability relative to the core essence of Metatronic consciousness. The Ark of Grace is a sounding or tuning device for the human element in its integration with Metatronic consciousness, and thus particular vibrational path this particular vibrational path of assimilation, the alphabet of the Ark, was chosen by the hierarchy for Metatronic consciousness to be returned to humanity. The alphabet of the Ark is encoded in alpha logic versus other fire codes which are encoded in omega logic. Alpha logic is a pattern that interfaces with the evolution of human logical mind processes and can therefore be presented in correlative human language forms, whereas the omega logic interfaces only with the higher mind principles incorporated in the soul and cannot be associated with any corollaries in human language expression. Now, I would pause here to say that the alpha logic of the alphabet of the arc, as has been given to me, that I give to people as individual templates, does not correlate with sentences, letters to spell words, or anything like that. So I don't believe that's what he's talking about here. He's saying that the alpha logic is a pattern that interfaces with human evolution, logical mind processes, and can therefore be presented in correlative human language forms. So there's a correlation, there's a way to reach it into your consciousness with the omega logic. I don't believe we could even write symbols that would relate to it. That doesn't mean it doesn't affect us, but it's like a pulsing laser light energy. It's not just, the alpha is too, but the alpha can be brought down into these patterns, these frequency patterns you can see with your eyes that make sense. They form a systemic function. The omega does not to our reasoning, not to our brains, and yet it can affect us nevertheless. To continue, Thoth also tells us that the Kitav-Iniyam is the overall format for which 144,000 different archangelic language stratum are contained within. Thus, the Kitav-Iniyam is formatted neither in alpha or omega logic, but contains both inherent within its overall design and is beyond that type of definition. The alphabet of the arc was chosen as the most viable path of all the 144,000 available pathways to work in synergy with a grounding device such as the Ark of the Covenant. The sacred On is what we're talking about here. Thoth tells us that there has never been any other of these available archangelic pathways used in conjunction with a device like an ark on Earth. However, some of the other 144,000 stratum or archangelic languages have been employed in various ways in the Earth's history and will continue to provide additional pathways to the greater light. The following was formed from the alphabet of the arc, vocables, which I have given, facilitated reactivation of the Metatronic Christic consciousness codes within the sacred vaults of the Egyptos. Of Egypt, in other words, in order to recapitulate the perfect ancient memory patterns contained therein for future generational light work. The sacred arc names are given as a means for the individuals on the journey to integrate more completely with the Metatronic Christic full light spectrum through the archangelic language used in conjunction with the Ark of Grace, which is now stationed inside a chamber within Mount Sinai. Okay, bear in mind how long ago this was written, and that Ark of Grace is now in the thresholding chamber, its last thresholding chamber on the planet before ascension, and that is here where I live, right out my window, in the Crest in the Stone Mountain. But at the time I wrote this, it had not been transferred, because it was only transferred a few years ago. The path of Horus, Return to the Stars, Sacred Journey, was in essence an opportunity for recapitulation of one's human divinity accessed via stellar coordinates, i.e. the path of Horus, which moves through the portal of space-time limitations and back into the Metatronic Christic spectrum of full light consciousness. The initiatic ritual enactment of the Return to the Stars, which the participants of this journey embarked upon, while not being the true physical passage, was nevertheless a measure of divine grace which can be imparted to the soul should the individual choose to accept it fully. The sacred ark name what we give to each individual we gave to each individual was and is a tool for the seeker to employ in their efforts to merge once again with their higher dimensional space.